Hello everyone, no one of consequence here, back again with a new video. This is episode 75 in a series which recounts my ongoing Dungeons & Dragons campaign, which is now in its 10th year. So, as always, spoiler alert, in this video I will be revealing details found in this adventure module. Also revealed will be ideas extracted from this free supplement, which can be downloaded from the Greyhawk Grognard website called D4 City of Spiders. Keep in mind, this is not a standalone product. You must also have a copy of D3 Vault of the Drow to make full use of it. Moving on, here is the player character roster for the Descent into the Depths campaign. We have 8 characters being controlled by 5 different players. And here are the NPCs currently traveling with the party. As always is the case, we have the party's 2 guard dogs, but now there is also the deep gnome Jomchert, whom the party recently plucked from the Drow City slave market. So where we left off last time, the party had just left a Drow high-class drug den, where they successfully bid in an auction for an ancient scroll about the Elder Elemental God. After making their own copy of the scroll, the characters set out to take the original to the Mind Flayer Sage and collect the reward he had offered for it. They were also rejoined by the Drow child, who had been waiting nearby while the characters were inside attending the auction. Back out on the streets, the characters rounded a corner and found themselves confronted by the leader of the Ayu's group and 2 of her minions. You will recall from last episode, this is the same group which had unsuccessfully bid against Varys to obtain the Elder Elemental God Scroll. Garrett quickly realized that the rest of the Ayu's group was down the street, moving up behind the party. The Ayu's group leader stepped forward and demanded that Varys immediately sell the scroll to her. When asked why she wanted it so badly, she said only that her master, presumably Ayuz himself, had ordered her to acquire the scroll at any cost. Therefore, Varys had better sell the scroll to her right now if he wanted to avoid any trouble. Varys said he needed a minute to consult with the rest of the party and turned to huddle up with them. However, what the characters really wanted to do was move down this nearby side street and thus have only one front to defend. The Ayu's group members located behind the party closed in but did not interfere. When it became clear that the characters were not going to cooperate, the Ayu's leader called her group back together. She then warned the characters that they would be meeting again soon. She said that this time she had been willing to buy the scroll from the characters. However, next time she would not be so generous. She then led her group down the street, and they all disappeared into the darkness. Once the characters were certain the Ayu's group had actually left, they continued on their way. Following the Drow girl's lead, they soon arrived at the pedestrian tunnel. This in turn led them to the seedy foreigner section of the city. As soon as the party exited the tunnel, Aramis tossed a few platinum coins towards some beggars sitting nearby. They immediately scrambled to gather up the coins. Meanwhile, a succubus lording on the street corner began trying to charm Obrak. This was the same one that had previously tried to charm Gorbadoc. However, Gorbadoc rejected her advances, saying that she didn't have enough of a beard to suit his tastes. In terms of gang mechanics, Obrak had resisted her charm person attempt. The succubus then flew up ahead and landed in front of Obrak, changing herself into the shape of a female dwarf, complete with beard. She then asked Obrak if this form pleased him instead, but he said nothing and continued past her. Disappointed, she changed back to her true form and flew back to her street corner. As the party continued on, Aramis flung a few more platinum coins at another group of street beggars. As they scrambled around to collect the coins, some characters accused Aramis of trying to incite fights amongst the beggars for his own amusement. But Aramis vehemently denied this, saying he was only trying to help the poor. Throwing the coins was only a distraction so that the party could pass by without being chased and harassed. The character soon reached the street where the Mind Flayer Sage lives. Most of the party entered the Mind Flayer Sage's building. Gorbadoc, being in there for the first time, expressed surprise and alarm that the other characters were dealing with a Mind Flayer. Remember that the last time the party was here, Gorb never actually entered the place. And afterwards, no one bothered to tell him that the sage they were working with was a Mind Flayer. Gorbadoc left, and the Sergeant Major took his place inside, while Garrett kept watch outside. The sage paid over the reward money he had promised, and then began examining the scroll. He was particularly interested in the part which described sacrificial ceremonies dedicated to the Elder Elemental God. The Mind Flayer then told the characters that if they were to have any hope of banishing the Elder Elemental God, they would first need to recover the Elemental Key that had been taken from Thorol. If you're not familiar with those events, you can go back and review episode 60. There, you will see how Thorol had been held captive by the Drow priestess Eclavdra, and the elemental gem he was carrying was taken from him. The sage said that Eclavdra had no doubt taken the elemental key to her own shrine dedicated to the Elder Elemental God, and this would be located within the House Isleserve compound. The Mind Flayer explained that all Drow noble families have an estate located on the other side of the Pitchy Flow River outside the city itself. Unfortunately, the noble lands can only be accessed via a heavily guarded bridge spanning the river. Non-noble Drow visitors are allowed across only if they have legitimate business with one of the Drow family estates. Thorol then struck upon the idea of expanding on Gorbadoc's plan of posing as slave traders. Thorol explained that they would go to the bridge and claim to be bringing slaves as restitution to Ned Eileen and House Despana. By now, word would have gotten around that the characters were in debt to Ned Eileen for having attacked the House Despana work party outside the city. This event was detailed in episode 72, if you're not familiar with it. The cover story would hopefully convince the guards to allow them to cross the bridge and enter the Drow noble lands. To help ensure success, they could even try to coordinate this plan with Ned Eileen ahead of time. Before they departed, the Mind Flayer told the characters that if they learned of any new information about the Elder Elemental God or recovered any other artifacts, he would pay handsomely for it. Gathering outside, the characters plotted what to do next. They decided that the first part of putting their plan into motion would be to acquire more slaves from the Drow, distasteful as that sounds. It would take more than their one deep gnome Jomjert to convince the bridge guards that they were bringing restitution to House Despana. Learning from Garrett that Gorbadoc was already in the nearby slave auction house, their characters went to check on him. Varys and Obrak went inside and sure enough found Gorbadoc there. Since the plan for gaining access to the Drow noble lands involved posing as slavers, They told Gorb to go ahead and participate. During the ensuing bidding, Gorb acquired a Kuatoan and a goblin. These two were sent outside to join Jomchurt and the rest of the party, while Varys tapped into the party's petty cash fund to pay the auctioneers. Just as they had done with Jomchurt the night before, the characters tried to reassure these new, quote, party members that they would soon be freed and then they could leave to rejoin their people. It was fairly easy to communicate with the goblin, but the characters were never quite sure if the Kuatoan had any idea of what they were trying to tell him. Another part of the plan was to convey to Ned Eileen of what the characters were up to and hopefully get her to play along. She might even be willing to tell the bridge guards to be watching for the characters and allow them to pass unhindered. Unfortunately, the characters had no idea of how to make contact with Ned Eileen. So they asked the streetwise Drow girl if she could help. She promised that she would get word to the right people, who could in turn ask Ned Eileen to meet the characters at the inn again. She then took off running and disappeared into the darkness. With nothing else to do for the time being, the characters decided to return to the inn. They arrived just in time to reclaim their usual table and order dinner. Niobe soon finished her dinner and retired to her room for the night, so Garrett took Niobe's seat. Meanwhile, Gorbadoc began his now usual routine of ordering up shots of the Lost Venom drink. A nearby table opened up, so Aramis had the new, quote, party members take a seat there. He also ordered food and drink for them. After only his second shot of Lost Venom, Gorbadoc failed the required saving throw versus poison. He immediately vomited over the edge of the table, forcing Garrett to jump out of his chair to avoid it. He then lay sprawled out on the table, dry heaving and groaning in pain. All this activity finally elicited a reaction from the now familiar band of half-Drow outcasts who were sitting nearby. The group's leader approached the characters' table and once more berated them for buying additional slaves and adding to the general misery of the Drow city. Aramis explained that their actions were not what they seemed, and that they were actually working on a plan for the greater good. Needless to say, the half-Drow outcast remained suspicious. Meanwhile, the nearby table of Kuatoans suddenly got up and approached the characters' table. Garrett moved to confront them, so the leader began speaking in the Kuatoan language with an obviously angry tone, while pointing at the new Kuatoan, quote, party member. At the same time, two of the Kuatoans broke off from the group, circled around, and began walking towards the party's Kuatoan. Obrak moved to block their way, and all the characters drew their weapons. Everyone, that is, except Thorol. He merely continued to eat dinner and observe events. At this point, the innkeeper and her cook, who also happened to be Kuatoan, ran up. She demanded that everyone put away their weapons and sit back down. Otherwise, she would kick everyone out and call for the city guard. Seeing that she was serious, everyone complied. The sergeant major asked her to find out why the Kuatoan table got so upset. As you might expect, they were angry that the characters had purchased a Kuatoan slave. So, the sergeant major asked the innkeeper to use the cook as a translator and find out if the Kuatoans wished to purchase his freedom. Again, keep in mind the point here is for the characters to appear in public as slave traders. After a brief negotiation, the Kuatoan party purchased their fellow's freedom in exchange for a single 100 gold piece gem. The sergeant major accepted the payment, and the Kuatoan party member went to join the others of his kind. After things calmed down again, everyone quickly grew tired of listening to Gorbadoc groaning and dry heaving. Finally, the sergeant major cast a cure poison spell on him to remove the effects of the lost venom liquor. Gorbadoc quickly recovered, cleaned up the mess he had made, and then declared himself ready for another shot of lost venom. Luckily, about this time, Ned Eileen arrived at the inn just as the Drow child had promised she would try to arrange. Unlike last time, Ned Eileen refused to sit with the characters in the common room, so they gathered in one of the private side rooms. The characters explained to her their plan for gaining access to the Drow noble lands, and specifically Eclavdra's House Isleserve compound. Ned Eileen agreed to go along with the plan, and even to tell the bridge guards to watch for the characters' arrival and allow them to pass. However, she also told them that her spies had informed her of yet another artifact regarding the Elder Elemental God. She said that this one is a stone tablet recently brought to the city by a band of priests of Nerul. For reference, Nerul, also called the Reaper, is the Greyhawk god of death, darkness, murder, cruelty, and the underworld. Ned Eileen said that the priest's orders are to present the stone tablet to Eclavdra as a gift in exchange for an alliance between the cults of Nerul and the Elder Elemental God. Ned Eileen said that the tablet is being stored at the local temple of Nerul, while the priests themselves, who are also staying at this very same inn, wait for an audience with Eclavdra. Ned Eileen encouraged the characters to go to the temple of Nerul, try to locate the stone tablet, and at least find out what is engraved upon it. She said the information might help them in their quest to banish the Elder Elemental God once and for all. And with that, Ned Eileen left the characters to make their plans. Next morning, the characters met for breakfast and to discuss the day's activities. Ned Eileen had told them where to find the foreign temple quarter, where all the major evil gods of Greyhawk have places of worship. She also mentioned that there are temples dedicated to both Loth and the Elder Elemental God there for use by non-Drow visitors to the city. Immediately after finishing breakfast, the characters set out again. Reaching the foreign temple quarter required the characters to once again pass through the slum-like foreigners' neighborhood. And also, once again, they had to run the gauntlet of beggars, succubi, and other unpleasant inhabitants of the place. Alright, well that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Please leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. If you know of a good place, please share the video, and anything you can do to help support the channel is appreciated. Thanks again, bye for now.